Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for December 4th, 2025. Today, we're going to start with a really interesting article from The Economist about the Mormon Church in Africa. It says, 2 decades ago, Samson Boma did something unusual for a Ghanaian high school student. He became a Mormon. Back then, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as the American Christian sect is formerly known, was on the fringes in Africa. Many viewed it as the white people's church. On his first mission in Nigeria, Mr. Boma encountered a woman who had been told that Mormons turned into goats at night. In Ghana, it was rumored they drank blood. Today, Mormonism still has a smaller footprint in Ghana and in Africa than other sects, but it is growing rapidly. Between 2011 and 2021, the number of members in Africa increased by 120%. Side note, that's according to the number of members the church claims, compared with 19% globally. Matt Martinick, a demographer who runs a blog devoted to the church, says that 9 of the 10 countries where expansion is fastest are on the continent. Moreover, unlike in other hotspots such as South America, where much of the recent growth is on paper only, African Mormons typically remain active and devoted members long after baptism, notes Elder Adeyinka Ojediran, the church's top official in West Africa. Another bit of information to be taken with a grain of salt, since Elder Ojediran is a general authority and thus is paid to be in his position. Back to the article. At first glance, the boom is surprising. Early Mormon leaders in America taught that black people were cursed, barring them from the priesthood until as late as 1978. Pause. This teaching is still in the Book of Mormon in 2 Nephi chapter 5, verse 21, where it says, "And he had caused the cursing to come upon them, yea, even a sore cursing because of their iniquity. For behold, they had hardened their hearts against him, that they had become like unto a flint. Wherefore, as they were white and exceeding fair and delightsome, that they might not be enticing unto my people, the Lord God did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them." The article goes on to say, partly because of this, governments in post-independence Africa often viewed Mormon missionaries with suspicion. Ghana's military regime in the 1980s briefly expelled them, accusing the church of undermining the country's sovereignty. A church with a lot of foreign missionaries made them a little uncomfortable, recalls William Soa, a Mormon elder who spent a night in jail at the time. Yet, having got started in Africa later than their rivals, Latter-day Saints are energetically catching up. More new missions are set to open in Africa in 2026 than in any other region, reflecting a, quote, tremendous channeling of resources to the continent, says Mr. Martinick. Temples are being built from Sierra Leone to Kenya, with 2 new ones in Ghana in the pipeline. According to Elder Ojediran, more than 2/3 of those who have joined the church in West Africa since 2019 have been under 26 years old. Wow. So they are targeting kids and young adults? Many are drawn, at least in part, by the opportunities it offers for educational and other advancement, including financial support for higher education, vocational training, and after-school classes. If I hadn't met the church, I wouldn't have finished secondary school, says Mr. Boma, who recently completed a master's degree. A study of the sect in post-independence Nigeria found that, for many African members at the time, American religion meant American wealth. This scenario in West Africa raises significant ethical questions regarding the methods of conversion. The church, possessing immense global wealth, estimated at over $300 billion, offers a clear and immediate path out of poverty or lack of education. For a young adult in West Africa, the church is not just a religious option, but can be a socio-economic ladder. This effectively converts an existential need like survival or future employment into the religious requirement of conversion. The needed support is linked to membership. To fully access the community, the social structure, and the financial assistance, individuals must join the church and, critically, adhere to all its requirements, including paying tithing. This creates a perpetual cycle. The church uses its existing wealth, derived from tithing, to attract new members seeking stability, who then, in turn, sustain the church's financial power. The statistic that 2/3 of new members are under 26 suggests a deliberate focus on the demographic most vulnerable to economic pressures and most dependent on future opportunities. Their decision to join is often an economic survival strategy first and a theological commitment second. It is less likely to be strictly deceptive if the church openly offers these programs and the missionaries do not conceal the requirements of membership or the details of the church they are joining. But are missionaries doing that? Do the potential converts in Africa know the truth about Joseph Smith and polygamy? Do they understand the racist priesthood ban and what disavow means? And are they being told that tithing must be paid to be worthy? Back to the article. As in America, Mormonism in Ghana and across Africa punches above its demographic weight. Among Ghana's 34 million people, it has more clout than the size of its membership roll, which only recently surpassed 100,000 might suggest. Since 2004, a gleaming Mormon temple has occupied a large plot on Accra's Independence Avenue, one of the capital's most historic thoroughfares. More recently, the church has taken to organizing high-profile conferences aimed at promoting family values. These have helped it to forge strong ties with prominent African politicians, including most recently the First Lady of Sierra Leone. Some worry this is helping fuel a backlash against women's and LGBTQ rights. A report by the Institute for Journalism and Social Change, a global media initiative, notes that the church's conferences have been followed by increases in homophobic violence in West Africa. The report's authors also say that Family Watch International, an NGO dedicated to opposing sex education that is run by a prominent Mormon activist, has helped push Ghana's curriculum in a more conservative direction. I actually reported on this in the past. The Mormon influence in Ghana goes beyond the religious to the political. How much such outside influence matters is contested. Elder Ojediran argues that the church's moral clarity on social issues makes it attractive to socially conservative Ghanaians. Either way, its rise in Africa looks set to continue. On a somewhat related note, let's discuss a new book that was recently published called Mormon Settler-Colonialism: Inventing the Lamanite by Elise Boxer. The description says, according to the Book of Mormon, descent racked the Hebrew prophet Lehi's family after they traveled to the Americas around 600 BC. A son, Laman, led rebellious followers who became Lamanites, cursed by God with a skin of blackness. In the 19th century, Joseph Smith, the first prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and his followers believed indigenous peoples to be Lamanite descendants, living in a degraded state because they no longer followed God's commandments. In Mormon Settler-Colonialism, Elise Boxer investigates the racializing ideologies perpetuated about indigenous peoples as a result of their categorization by Mormon doctrine as Lamanites. Boxer uses a theoretical framework of settler colonialism, in which settlers dispossess indigenous peoples of their lands and identity. To explore how the Mormon Church has used religious doctrine to define and construct indigeneity, she examines the development of these ideas beginning with the early 19th century establishment of the LDS Church and the publication of religious texts like the Book of Mormon, which introduced the Lamanite. Boxer explores Mormon settler colonialism beginning in the mid-1800s and investigates the Indian Student Placement Program, a foster care program that placed indigenous children in Mormon homes during the second half of the 20th century. Boxer argues that Mormon settler colonialism persists today, evident in the recent publications of an LDS Church manual using racialized language and contestations over the proposal to remove a mural depicting Mormon settler life in a sacred religious structure. Boxer demonstrates how indigenous peoples have been objects of erasure by Mormon doctrine and practices as Mormon settlers wielding their whiteness, signaling their innocence, justifying their actions, and securing their belonging through the production of Lamanite discourse. Although the idea of the Lamanite is foundational to Mormon discourse, the formation and dissemination of this constructed identity has not been examined in broader terms of colonialism and the cultural genocide of indigenous peoples. This provocative book deepens the intersection of Mormonism, race, indigeneity, and colonialism in a critical and necessary direction. Sounds like a must-read. I definitely need to put it on my Christmas list. Now, let's go to the next talk that needs analyzing from the October 2025 General Conference. It is Know Who You Really Are by Brick Iyer of the 70. He opens with the following story.
Several years ago, our daughter had a profound experience on her mission. Yesterday, a returning member asked us to come over as soon as possible. When we arrived, we found her on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Through the tears, we found out that she had lost her job, was going to be evicted from her apartment, and once again, become homeless. Our daughter continued, I started frantically searching my scriptures, trying to find something, anything to help her. As I was looking for the perfect verse, I thought, what am I doing? This is not what Christ would do. This is not a problem that I can solve, but this is a literal daughter of God that needs my help. So I closed my scriptures, knelt beside her, and held her while we cried together until she was ready to stand up and face this trial. After this woman was comforted, our daughter then used the scriptures to try and help her understand the reality of her divine worth and to teach her one of the most fundamental truths of our existence, that we are beloved sons and daughters of God, a God that feels perfect compassion for us when we suffer and is ready to assist us as we stand back up.
In all my time in the Mormon church, a prayer never put food on the table. Reading the scriptures never secured me a job. A priesthood blessing never healed a physical or mental ailment. Thinking I was a daughter of God never paid my bills, and attending the temple never clothed my children. The missionary story presents an urgent, critical, temporal need and attempts to resolve it solely with emotional comfort and spiritual doctrine, rather than any reference to practical institutional aid. This is called spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is a defense mechanism where a spiritual belief or practice is used to avoid dealing with underlying psychological, emotional, or structural issues. In this talk, a life-threatening temporal crisis is acknowledged, and the solution offered is exclusively spiritual. The daughter describes a situation requiring immediate financial and housing intervention. The LDS Church has massive humanitarian and financial reserves, which exist specifically for situations like this. Why in heaven's name did the missionary open her scriptures instead of making a phone call to secure physical aid? The daughter correctly chooses to offer comfort first, but the narrative immediately pivots away from the temporal need, and the crisis, the woman losing her home, is not solved. It is reframed. The woman's urgent, immediate, and physical problem is replaced with an internal spiritual solution. She is seemingly not given a job referral, rental assistance, or access to the bishop's storehouse. She is given the strength to face this trial. Brick and his daughter's anecdote are a powerful example of how the Mormon Church prioritizes teaching doctrine over addressing solvable problems of temporal injustice and systemic poverty. Brick does go on to quote a woman, which is kinda cool, but it is really just lip service until women are allowed to have the priesthood and hold the highest positions in the church. Next, we are going to go to East Idaho News, where a 24-year-old BYU-Idaho student has been charged following social media outrage after a woman posted about him allegedly stealing her shopping cart with her newborn baby inside at a local Costco. Michael Garrison Rain from California is charged with felony second-degree kidnapping. According to a probable cause affidavit, Natalie Millett called the Idaho Falls Police Department on Thursday, November 20th, to report that a man had stolen her shopping cart at Costco with her 4-week-old infant inside. Officers later obtained video footage which reportedly showed the man entering the store around 10:20 a.m. with an empty shopping cart. At 10:40 a.m., he is reportedly seen walking around the book area without a cart and appearing to be looking around at people and also examining books. Millett eventually wanders into the same aisle as the man, who police say opened a book, brought the opened book up to his nose, then appeared to sniff the center pages of the book very closely. He then reportedly put the book away and walked near Millett and her baby. Police reports state that he walked to the end of the aisle, which only had him and Millett and her baby in it, and then looked around before he grabbed the front end of the cart and spun it around behind her. The man then pushed the cart away from Millett and walked down the aisles behind the book area. Millett quickly realized the cart was gone, searched for it, and the baby found the cart, took it back, then walked away. According to court documents, the suspect follows Millett and tries talking to her as she walks away. The man then went to a self-check register and used a Costco membership account that did not belong to him to check out and buy food at the food court. He sat down to eat before leaving. Officers were able to track the address on the Costco membership to an apartment building in Rexburg that houses male BYU-Idaho students. The owner of the membership was determined to be a roommate of the suspect. Investigators then identified the suspect as Rain due to his Facebook account, BYU-Idaho student profile, and resemblance to the man in the Costco surveillance video. EastIdahoNews.com confirmed with BYU-Idaho Public Affairs Director Brett Crandall that Rain is currently enrolled at the school. Rain reportedly admitted to going to Costco on Thursday, November 20th, but stated that nothing of note happened at Costco and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Investigators told him that a child was taken that day and said Rain acted as if he was surprised. They then clarified that he took the child and he reportedly stated, "Oh, that? I'm so sorry. I remember that now." That's very odd. I guess we will have to wait and see if there are any updates. Next, let's go to Facebook for a post from Missionary Mamas Worldwide that says, "Should I say something? Kindly, of course. Our son was just released Tuesday about 10 days before we expected because the mission president wanted to streamline things and have service missionaries service end at a transfer time. We found out Sunday, so our son had his last 2 weeks of missionary service pulled out from under him suddenly. Then we were given a letter by our stake president, who is amazing, from the mission leaders. It is a form letter. I get that they may not be able to write letters for every departing missionary, so it's not bothering me too much that it's a form letter, but it's a form letter for a proselytizing mission. It talks about their enduring the harsh weather here and knocking doors and how now they are returning home. Our son hasn't looked at it, and I almost don't even want to give it to him. And this is after the ward did a mission night for the youth that was only adults who've served foreign missions presenting. Our son had been called to home country mission and served for exactly 1 year, then came home due to an incident caused by stress and overwhelm. He was immediately made a temple worker, so I know there was no concern over worthiness. Our stake president has been amazing throughout the entire experience, but to be given a form letter at his release that's not even about his type of mission just seems sort of insulting. So should I talk to the stake president about it? It's tempting to go directly to the mission president, but I'm pretty confident I shouldn't do that. Just a, hey, if you're gonna use a form letter, at least try to make it less obvious by making one for service missionaries too. This post points out so many problems with the Mormon missionary program. First off, people who serve missions outside the U.S. are considered better. They just are. Second, releasing a missionary 10 days early simply to match a transfer date is a pure corporate efficiency decision. It treats the missionary's final service time as disposable inventory rather than a sacred contracted commitment. For a missionary who has already faced the stress that led to his initial return, this abruptness and lack of personal dignity is disrespectful to the sacrifice he has made. Also, the fact that the office, which oversees the service missionary program, does not have a distinct form letter for it, demonstrates a profound disconnect. It implies that the mission president's office views the service missionary experience as either a secondary program or simply a failed version of the proselytizing mission, rather than a unique and valued form of service. And did anyone else notice that the mother felt compelled to reassure readers that her son was immediately made a temple worker, so I know there was no concern over worthiness? This necessary defense mechanism exposes a core toxic element of the culture. Any early return or transition to a different kind of service often carries the stigma of a worthiness issue, implying moral failure rather than simply acknowledging mental, physical, or emotional health struggles. The mother is publicly preempting judgment. And last up today, let's finish with this great quote that says, "Destroy the idea that you gotta be good at artistic things to enjoy them, that every hobby has to become something you're so good at you can monetize it. That is a capitalist lie. Sing off key, draw poorly, write badly. Life is meant to be enjoyed, not monetized. You're not a product." And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.